Who remembers that great NFL Films project matchup of the Millennium? I still have my VHS set right here. This was a cool project using archival footage and fresh interviews with legendary players in an effort to see who would win a contest among the greatest NFL dynasties at the time. This is copyright 2000. And so we saw a tournament, a very brief couple of games, and a Millennium Bowl pitting the 60s Packers, the 70s Steelers, the 80s Niners, and the 90s Cowboys against one another. It was really well done. Of course, it's all been digitized, and I'll put the links to the YouTube versions in the description here. Some parts of it may seem pretty cheesy now, but it was really a great project right up our alley because these are the kinds of projects that we can play. Now, of course, we're going to talk about how to play this project in the context of APBA football primarily, but there are many, many statistics-based football games out there that you can play on your tabletop, from Stratomatic to Second Season by Play, Data-Driven Football, which is the update of Pay Dirt. You've got PTG games. You've got 4th Street Software. You've got Fast Drive Football, which is a drive-by-drive game. Action PC, if you're more computer-oriented, or Pro Strategy Football for the PC. You've got every means available to you to play this matchup. APBA football cards every single player and allows you to quickly create lineups and compare these teams across the decades. Now, the way this tournament worked was they chose to pit the 60s Packers against the 80s Niners and the 70s Steelers against the 90s Cowboys. And now this really gets to the heart of what a what-if project could look like, should look like, and what the premises are. I mentioned they did a lot of interviews, and they also had a lot of cool commentary. They had Ron Jaworski doing some pregame analysis on the field. They had Joe Theismann and Steve Sabol in the booth. They even resurrected audio clips of Howard Cosell. I think it was really well done. But boy, I tell you what, if you know APBA or Strat or Play, this is just another day of gaming on your tabletop. They interviewed a bunch of these players and talked about how these teams might fare. I mean, they went back and interviewed Hornung and Bart Starr. They interviewed Aikman, Dave Robinson of the Packers. I mean, they really did some fun stuff. Ronnie Lott. So it's worth it just to kind of get the sense of how they might have played the game. And there are a couple of interesting moments among those pregame interviews that really speak to the what-ifness that we get to. Now, one of those interviews was with former Steeler linebacker Andy Russell. And he talked about how in the 70s, those linemen were kept light. And we've talked about this a lot with various historians on the channel, Joe Zagorski and others. And what Andy Russell noted was that these linemen would often be fined if they were overweight, but that they could easily add 20, 30, 40 pounds and match up with those Cowboys linemen of the 90s who post-Hogs era averaged 300 pounds a person. And Matt Millen, who was with the Niners, again, they used any player who played for these teams within the decade, 1980 to 1989, 1970, 79, etc. And Matt Millen made a really great point about the Packers. He said that he'd been watching film of the Packers for 35 years, but that the Packers would only have a couple years or a couple weeks to study film of the 80s Niners. And now that gets to the time capsule aspect of what if. And Keith Avalone talked about this recently in announcing his 75th anniversary NASCAR driver set, which is a really cool set, large print, great design. But he talked about the two approaches that they considered. One of those was to normalize drivers across era in a kind of time machine approach. In other words, using that blend of art and science, that dark magic of trying to equate performances across eras. But he opted for the second approach, which I really like, and that's the way I play it, which is to kind of have all these people perform in a bubble. And he referenced the movie Cars, where you've got the older drivers and the younger drivers, the older cars and the newer cars. So that's the way I like to do it. I would say, look, it's completely fantastical anyway. It's simply a physical impossibility to get these teams on the field. Why not simply allow them to play according to their strengths in their era and let the chips fall where they may? We're going to play Matchup of the Millennium using APBA football, but there is a catch. we're not going to play the dynastic teams. We're going to play the pre-dynastic teams. We're going to play the 1959 Packers against the 1969 Steelers, the 1979 Niners, and the 1989 Cowboys. Why would we do such a thing? Well, first of all, playing the cellar dweller teams is nothing new. I've seen folks create something called the toilet bowl, all the losing teams. Of course, we played the 76 Buccaneers season, just like so many other folks have. That winless season, of course, they weren't alone. If you'd like to play the 1960 Cowboys in their inaugural 0-11-1 season, you go right ahead. Now, the reason I like this pre-dynastic approach is because, one, we've got all the sets, and this is something I've thought about since we acquired a 1959 set years ago, the original set released in 1960. The reason I love this is because of that uncanny circularity of sports. We talk about it all the time here. Wouldn't you know that it just so happens that every coach of those dynasties to be took the helm of those teams the year prior to the decade of their greatness. Vince Lombardi left the 58 Giants after that greatest game ever played lost and joined the Packers. Chuck Noll left the Colts after that Super Bowl III lost and joined the Steelers. Bill Walsh and Jimmy Johnson joined their teams out of college in 79 and 89. So a really fun similarity there. However, one of these things is not like the other. Let's take a look at the records, starting with the 1989 Cowboys. They finished 1-15. The 79 Niners finished 2-14. That was the second year of the 16-game schedule. The 69 Steelers went 1-13. In 1959, Green Bay went 7-5 in Vince Lombardi's inaugural season. They started strong with 3 straight wins, dropped their middle 5, and then some kid named Bart Starr was given the go-ahead, and they closed out with 4 victories. Of course, in 1960, they came within a few yards and 4 points of winning their first NFL title before their path to winning 5 NFL titles began with the 1961 season against Vince Lombardi's old New York Giants. So that's why I like this project. Let's take a look really quickly at the 59 Packers, the 69 Steelers, the 79 Niners, and the 89 Cowboys. And right away, you can see the evolution of APBA football, the long envelopes and different typography. And you get the envelopes with the team names and cities on them before you see just the team city. Now let's take a look at these teams because this is going to be a really close competition. That's part of the reason it's fun. They are all kind of in that range, except the 7-5 Packers. We'll see what their point totals look like on offense and defense. Otherwise, 1 and 2 win teams should be pretty evenly matched and make it exciting. And this is the part of the game that really gets you into the history. Joe Green's rookie year, for instance, really cool. Or Bart Starr taking over for Lamar McCann. So we'll start with the 1959 Packers, the old long envelope. And this is the original APBA typography. Of course, APBA football was issued for the first time in 1958 with cards representing the 1957 season, which ended with that barn-burning Lions at Niners tiebreak before the NFL title game the Lions hosted against the Browns. So a really prescient introduction there. Of course, the year after that was the greatest game ever played, and then we come to the 1959 season, which is notable in APBA terms because the player point totals don't have parentheses around them. A little piece of trivia there. But as I mentioned, Lamar McCann got the start for the Packers that year. And after a bit of a midseason slump, Bart Starr got the call. And he was Brady before Brady. He was Roethlisberger before Roethlisberger. And who else do we have here? Well, let's just take a look. You've also got that kind of cool orange-ish, the light doesn't show it here, but the original APBA football cards, a little more in that orange-red spectrum. Now let's take a look at some of the names here you're going to recognize really quickly on this 59 Packers team. Now, the way APBA works is each player gets a point total from 5 to 1. 5 the best, 1 the worst. you add up the point totals of your offensive team. You compare those to the point totals of the starting lineup of your opponent's defense, and you determine your offense's operating index, A, B, or C. A, the best, B, standard, most common, C, the worst. Does Taylor have? Yes, he does. Check out those that 2 at 66. The lesser of the 2 breakaway numbers, and the golden boy Hornung. Ooh, look at those triple ones at 66, because he's kicking, he's passing, he's running, and he's got that 2 at 11 and that 1 at 66. The 1 gives you a little more yardage on those breakaway plays. You got Luke Carpenter on special teams. And what happens is you each coach creates these offensive indexes, and then you start calling run and pass plays, and you on defense call your defensive line setting, light, medium, or heavy. You can key the runner or receiver to lessen their yardage gains. Oh yeah, Mr. Ray Nitschke is kind of a younger person there, so you may get that start there. You decide what you'd like to do there, and you're seeing here the Packers have some pretty good totals here. So they're going to actually be probably in APBA terms. They might. Oh, Emlyn Tunnel. Oh my goodness. I think these Packers are actually going to be maybe the biggest threat in this tournament, given what we just saw there. I'll go to the 69 Steelers, take a quick look through their roster. And 1969 is the first season that APBA offered extra football players, 4 players per team that you could add to your lineups that cost a little extra. They don't do that anymore. Every team has all its players pretty much carded, and that's just one set price there. So let's just take a look at what the 69 Steelers in that transition, that period before greatness. Ray Mansfield. He had some longevity into the 70s, yes. Dick Hoke. Not a breakaway there, however. Rose. Seen a lot of 3s there, which means these guys kind of did their jobs, right? Got a nice dangerous 1 at 66 in the passing column for Richard Earl Dick Jr. Shiner. And that's often a touchdown, not always. And, of course, Roy Jefferson the Great. He's got a little better rating, 4 points there. I liken these point ratings to job descriptions. 5 means you should probably be a coach. 4 means that you did a much better than average job. 3 means you did the job. 2 means you barely did the job. And 1 means you should probably be out of a job. And who do we have here? Steel Curtain. As Mr. Joe Green, starting his career as a 3. Now, in his all-pro seasons, he's got a 5 there easily. And we got Chuck Hinton there. So not a lot of the curtain hasn't quite been sewn together yet in 1969. But good old Andy Russell, I remember he was interviewed for this project prior to the Steelers and Cowboys game. I won't give away what the final is because you can just go and watch that. I will say that it was really cool when they held the Millennium Bowl that just show Mr. Terry Hanratty there, who ends his career with the 76 Buccaneers, the aforementioned. And one of the great XFs you needed is Mr. L.C. Greenwood. And you can note the XFs of the vintage era by those squared corners because the cards were sold all printed together, and then you had to separate those 4 extra players by hand. From 1976 to the early 2000s, they added a 5th extra player that you could purchase. What's cool about the Millennium Bowl, the way they did it, is that they played the first half in one team's home city and the second half in the other team's city. 79 49ers. And this is my original set where I typed out the roster and the point totals. I think, yes. So you can see right there, not bad for a 2-win team. 33 out of 55 possible points. That's about as middling as you can get. Okay? And just for reference, the winless 76 Buccaneers in the original era were 26 points on offense and 29 points on defense. So you're not going to see an 11-point squad ever in Apple football unless you pull in all the fourth stringers. And let's take a look at what, well, I'll tell you right off the bat here, one of the most important cards in APBA ever is Joe Montana's rookie card. That's a 1-point XF. Speaking of pulling together the one-pointers, now it's curious to note that one of the oldest APBA football leagues started in Tampa in 1979, was a draft league and a keeper league. Joe Montana never played in it because of that card, essentially. So the pieces, again, are not quite in place there. But let's just start taking a look at what we have here. Who's going to be pitting against one another. Now, these are, again, not the 80s Niners. These are the pre-dynastic Niners. So, but Keith Fahnhorst, now that tells you right there that Keith Fahnhorst had a better than average season, okay? He might have made All-Pro. Maybe didn't make first-team All-Pro. That's what gets you the 5. Freddie Fabulous Solomon, 4-point and an A-grade receiver. And look at those 1s and 2s in his R column. That means he took an end around to the house. That A grade on receiving means that he can elevate his team's index. And there, we'll talk about the mechanics there. Mike Schumann has a split grade. He's better on short passes than long passes. And this is prior to the master game, which we won't go into here for folks who'd like to just kind of follow along and see what the matchup of the pre-millennium might look like. Paul Hofer, again, strong 4-point fullback, halfback, A-rated receiver. He's more of an outside back with those 3, 5s, and 7s and 9s, but he's got that breakaway runner at 66. So again, you want to hit that 66 on your runner pass play. And look at Wilbur Jackson, A, B grade. Again, you've got some weapons here for, well, not Mr. Montana. You even got good old OJ, all right? And he does not have a breakaway. He's just got that straight 15 at the 66 there. But Mr. Steve DeBerg gives you a solid 3. Now, I haven't looked at the final record or the game-by-game schedule of the 79 Niners to see how many of those games were won or lost by 7 or fewer points. That's usually my criterion. I look at a team that lost X number of games by 7 or fewer points, and those are the kind of the swing games that should help you determine whether this team could go a little farther along in the season. And if they were a better than average team, Cedric Nasty Hardman, oh my goodness. Harper, a lot of 3s. Dan Bunn, see, he just gets that little extra nudge because he had a better season, and that all factors into the game. Take a look at that secondary there. Not going to see a Ronnie Lott quite yet, but you're going to see, and this is really great, the once and future Steeler, Tony Dungy, was a nickelback for the 78 Steelers, recovered that fumble in Super Bowl 13, and here he is with the 79 Niners. Just the fun history that you see. Of course, Montana. Is there anyone else here that you might remember? Well, Lenville Elliott, for sure. Walt Downing. Morgan, Schumann, Dwayne Board starts to figure in a little bit later. And lastly, we're going to take a look at the 89 Cowboys. Now, you're going to see the typographic difference here, which they changed with the original 1985 season set. They went to a serif typography. So start with Mark Tuaney, and we'll watch the weights there. He's only 283 pounds there. Kitchen Newton, 317. Okay, and then a real blast from the past, a connection to the actual Cowboy dynasty of the 70s. Tom Rafferty, look at that. A rookie in 76, judging if he got out of college at age 22, born in 54. Look at that. There he is. There he is. I love it. Of course, Mark Stepnowski at 269 is there as well. So you decide whether you start the youngster or the veteran. Big Daddy Crawford, 285. Kevin Gogan, 306. Now, that's a whole huge average line. But, of course, there were some guys who were that weight in the 70s, fewer and farther between. Good old Michael Irvin there, born in 66. We love our 66s in APBA because that's where the touchdowns often are, but not exclusively. He is a split BC grade. Now, in this era of the card, you have a screen pass option and a medium pass option. So his B grade would apply to the shorter screen pass and the C to the medium or long pass. And that can help improve the team's index for passing plays. And then you got Kelvin Martin. So there you go. A dramatically different look, pre-dynastic look. It looks a whole lot different. Earl Johnston. I've got him in the special team / backup slot. Of course, fullback and ET, meaning tight end. That's just a holdover code. That's the way they did it. And then, of course, Troy Aikman. Solid 3 points. Not bad. 6'3", 220. That's roughly Bradshaw height weight, yeah. And he's got 3.53 at 11:33.66, so he's okay on his passing. It won't be anything incredible. Zendejas. These are your punt and kick returners and your punters and kickers, and now we go to, look at that, Too Tall Jones, the 1989 Cowboys. Again, born in 1951, he was a rookie even earlier in Landry's career. Look at that. 6'9", 278. He's saying, hey, the rest of the league finally caught up with my height and weight here. But you could also play Tony Tolbert at 6'6", 245. Seems more like an outside linebacker in that regard. Blake Broughton, Tasmanian Devil Hamill. Got another XF in here. Noonan, if you want to use him. Jim Jeffcoat. Now, see, and you'll notice the V grade there at the that means that is a split grade for pass and run defense. If you choose to use the master game versions of the rules, the V rating gave you an indication that he was a point better on the pass against the run, and you can substitute him out on likely passing or run plays in and out. And Jack Del Rio, see, this is the history, this is where it kind of well before the coaching career, right? Hitting machine Lockhart. I mean, this is the great way not only to remember your heroes, but remember some folks. Ken Norton. Look at that. Everson Cubby Walls. Again, that's a veteran at that point. Pitbull Williams. It's going to be a really interesting contest because these teams are going to be pretty evenly matched. Is there anyone else here? I don't think there's anyone that will remember. Well, Bill Bates, you certainly remember him. Again, he's an XF in this set, an extra football player. So there you go. And now this, to conclude, is why you need every single team in a given season set. I don't like just the Super Bowl teams or just the playoff teams or just the 500 and up teams. I like to play every once in a while the lesser teams like the 89 Cowboys, 79 Niners, 69 Steelers, or 59 Packers. I'm not the only one. Every once in a while, someone's going to come along and say, hey, it's great to play the best all the time, but sometimes you want to go back and appreciate how a team grew, how these dynasties were born and shaped, and how the chemistry evolved to create these legendary tenures in the sporting landscape. So, matchup of the Millennium Redux with APBA football. How are we going to play this scenario? Are we going to follow the 3-game format of the actual matchup of the Millennium, or are we going to create a single 4-team division and have every team play all the others, a simple round-robin tournament, and pick the top 2 finishers, have some sort of tie break, things like that? Not sure yet. So the last thing we need to address is the concept of compatibility. Now, this is the currently available basic rule book, basic results book. You order the game from the Stadium Shop today, and this is what you will get. You can also buy the master results, which have expanded outcomes, but we have the original season sets of these teams: 59 Packers, the 69 Steelers, 79 Niners, and the 89 Cowboys. So this brings up the issue of what results boards we'll use. Now, the master game of APBA football was issued in 1983 with the 1982 season set. they added some plays like the screen play, the draw play, the trick play, the audible, the medium pass. And they broke down the results into 2 sets of columns per play, per index, per line setting of the defense to give you more outcomes in the first and third quarter or the second and fourth quarter. But we're talking about basic game here. And in that regard, let's go back to when APBA football was issued again in 1958 with a 1957 season set. That set of boards was in effect until the mid-60s. So we can use that for the 59 Packers. Now, when you get to the 69 Steelers, well, the mid-60s board revision lasted through to the 1971 season originally issued. And so we'll use that set of boards for the 69 Steelers. And what they did is they moved some special teams results around, punt return, touchdown, things like that, and just modified some things here and there. Lastly, in 1973, for the 1972 season as originally issued, the third pre-master set of APBA football revisions came out. And that lasted, in fact, until the 1981 season, of course, the Niners' first Super Bowl win in the dynasty. And so we'll use that set of boards for the 49ers team of 79. Of course, the 89 Cowboys already fell into that master game era, so you don't need to recalculate that. Now, we do have the recalculated 59 and 69 season sets. The 79 set has not been recalculated and reissued. It is a fairly Herculean task. So either way we do it, whether we play 3 of the contemporary seasons, the 59, 69, and 89 version, or use all our original cards, we have our boards covered. And it's really easy to simply, on offense of a given team, use their respective boards, and you are fine. I've done this numerous times playing a pre-master team against a post-master team. So there's the plan for Millennium Bowl Redux, a pre-dynastic take on the Packers, Steelers, Niners, and Cowboys. This is exactly what tabletop stats-based games are made for. They've been around for decades. So if you're a football fan, a fan of vintage, classic NFL, these games are right up your alley. You can have hours of fun with this. As we already discussed, there's several ways you can approach this project alone. And of course, given the Patriots of the 2000s and the Chiefs of the recent era, you've got 2 more dynasties that you can add there. Get 2 original AFL teams in the mix here to kind of even it out. So you have 3 NFC teams, 3 AFC teams, makes it even a better tournament. And that way you can maybe create 2 divisions and have some sort of seeding system there. You can do anything you want with these games. If you have any questions about how to get started with tabletop football simulations and stats-based games, shoot us a note at applefootballcluboriginal@gmail.com. Always happy to answer your questions and guide you along the way. There's no better way to enjoy your current heroes, your heroes of the past, to teach folks about the game, to learn something about the game. If you like to play your football heroes past and present, these games are the way to go. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you've never played these games, we'd love to help you along. We'll give you any guidance that we can or point you to folks who have knowledge of games that we haven't played yet. You'd be surprised at the number of seasons available. You'd be surprised at what you learn when you go back to an era you may not be personally acquainted with and start to replay a season. It's really fun stuff. I've stuck with APBA football since 1979. That's how compelling these games are. The project possibilities are endless. This is where fantasy football starts. This ultimately leads you to this, which is true fantasy football. At your fingertips, no electricity, just cards and dice and your imagination. I would say get in the game, but I believe that line's been taken. So I'll simply say this. If you're a fan of the classic NFL, vintage football, whatever the era, these games have you covered. If you're looking for a new hobby, this is right up your alley. Again, email us at applefootballcluboriginal@gmail.com and we'll be happy to help get you started.